Hey everyone, it's Book of Catherine. So I want to apologize for the rough surroundings, but it's kind of a rough day, health wise. But we will move past that. So I have something special to share with you today. You have a little Tiberius cat in the background. Hi, little lion. You want to say hello? Yeah, it's kind of late at night. Oh, you my little protector. Anyway, I want to share with you guys just some tips on, well, not tips, I guess, but just some secrets, whatever. They'll take them as what you will, but things that my husband and I do. So things that I consider to be what make us a successful couple. So when we were able to go out and about, people always said that they always thought that we were a new couple. They always thought that we were like just married, and we weren't, like, forever. They always were like, "Oh, did you just get married?" And I remember asking on Facebook, when I was on Facebook, I was like, "Oh, people thought that we were newlyweds again." And they were like, "Yeah, it's because you don't have kids." And I was just kind of like, "Is that the reason why?" I don't think that it is. Like, but anyway, we'll just share these tips, and there are things that people have commented on. I guess that's my thing, is that a lot of people have commented on these things, about things that my husband and I do that make us a unique couple. And for that reason, I want to share them with you, because for whatever, and I hope that they are helpful. So I had to write them down to remember, because I've been trying to remember to tell them to you for forever. So I hope that they help. So, the first one, I'm going to go, the first one is a big skill, because we had to work. Like, we both came from damaged households. Like, we both had to work on our relationship in the beginning. Yeah, it wasn't easy. There's this great saying, I'll never forget it, and I really hope this helps you guys out. Two things happen when you get married or when you're in a relationship. So there is this big thing that happens when you get married. So you go from, this one therapist said it to my husband. He said that when you're dating a girl, like, or a partner or whatever, they're in your friends category. Like, like, men like to departmentalize. And so a girl is like in your friends category. Like, she's in your friends category. She is in your, like, filing cabinet. Like, you have filing cabinets in your life. And she is in your filing cabinet of friends and people you hang out with and acquaintances. And that's who she is. And that's all good and everything like that. And you relate to her on, like, a friend's level, like, that you learned how to relate to when you were growing up, like an adolescent. You learned how to form relationships and friendships like an adolescent. And so she is in that category. And then when you get married, all of a sudden, after you get married, the reason things change is because suddenly she's in your family cabinet, and it, like, moves over a compartment. And things that can make things suddenly very topsy-turvy, because what happens is that in your brain, like, you have pathways. Like, I don't know if Jordan Peterson's gone over this. I haven't heard everything that he's done. But I know people are way more educated out there than they used to be. But basically, like, when they talk about love maps and things like that, like, the reason they say that your first 4 years are so important, like, your first 4 years of development are so, so important. And the reason they're trying to change funding and everything like that to try and get to kids that young is because that's when, like, all, like, the rest of their life is, like, charted out for them. Like, that formative 4 years, like, the way they make relationships, the way they see life, like, everything. And that's because they are, like, their map. All the tracks are being laid in their head. All the neurosynapses are being laid for, like, all the emotions. Like, emotion regulation is being laid. So how you regulate anger, like, how you regulate pain, like, how you regulate like, surprise, like, startle. Like, startle's my big thing. Like, I have a big problem with startle response. All those sorts of things are an issue. And so what happens is, like, I went to therapy for years, and it wasn't until a therapist, and like, I dealt with the leaves on the end of the tree, but I didn't deal with the trunk of the tree. And what happened was my whole life changed when I found a therapist that dealt with those first 4 years and dealt with, like, went in there and just worked on what was formed in those first 4 years, and just like relayed all the tracks and helped me like regulate my emotions in a healthy way. And I was just like, okay, like, went back to the very beginning, and I was like, oh, like, and that was it. Like, got off all the antidepressants, like all the, like, within weeks, I got off everything. Right. And so what happens is all those tracks that were laid and everything like that, I look so terrible. Oh, well, it's too bad. So, I look like I'm 30 years older than I am. Oh, please give me some grace, you guys. Anyway, so they just, they said it just moves over. And so whatever, like, damage you have from your family, like, whatever mistrust that you have or whatever issues going on in your family, it suddenly, like, moves over. And she's not a friend anymore. She's suddenly family. And, like, if you've got issues with your family or anything, patterns of relating that you have with your family, it switches over to her, and things can go topsy-turvy. And the exact same thing happens when you have a kid. That's the other thing we hear all the time. Like, all of our friends, when they had kids, they were like, it was like I was married to a different person. Exact same thing. Because the moment you have a kid, all of a sudden your synapses switch over to your parents. Like, all of a sudden, everything, the way your parents raised you, boom, like, all of those things come back in. And you could have grown up and left the house and, like, totally relearned and become yourself. And then, boom, you have a kid, and, man, everything, the way your parent raised you, all that parenting comes in, and you're like, I want to raise my kid the way, and you become your parents, and the other person becomes their parents. And unless you're aware of it, if you had healthy parents and everything like that, they may not become an issue. But for a lot of people, it does. And so, yeah, when we first got married and stuff like that, like, we had to work through it because both of us came from really, really, really unhealthy households. Luckily, though, like, we were both, like, the people that got kicked. And so we were both, like, really, really, like, the nice people who were like, oh, like, we were the ones that we were like the glue that held the family together, that the whole family rotated around. And so we were like the helper out. We were the mediators. We're both the mediators of the family, like the one that kind of helped the family out. And so when it came to us coming together, we were kind of like in this idea of like, okay, how do we help each other out? But we still needed to learn how not to sink each other, if that makes sense. Especially like both, like the families just were not happy because if we came together, that meant less time with them. And both families didn't like that. They wanted all of our time, like holding the families together. That was a problem. And so, coming together was a big issue. And so here's like the first thing that I have on here, which is like the biggest thing, is that the skill that we had to learn was, it was like a mantra that we said in the beginning, is that we were like, I'm on your team. We learned, like, we were like, I'm on your team. You're on my team. I'm on your team. It was not him and I against each other. We learned that I was like, I'm on your team, baby. Like, when it came to him and his parents, I was like, I'm not on their team. I'm on your team. And we learned to say it to each other. Like, if we were going into my parents' house for Easter or something like that, like, he'd say it to me. He's like, I'm on your team. And it would be hard because, my parents would, like, charm him and everything like that. And I would feel like he wasn't. And so we had to work on that, on being like, okay, like, like, whose team are we on? And it was an effort, and we got there. Does that make sense? Because we had to we'd leave the house, and I'd be like, my parents were sinking me in there, but then there was a thing of like, well, codependency. And then that was the second thing I was going to tell you, is that we had to learn that It was not our place to rescue one another. That's a big thing, is that it was a big temptation for us to rescue each other. Like we wanted to, like we were trying to figure out how to navigate staying in two very unhealthy families. And eventually, like I said in my Thanksgiving video, which I'll link right here, we finally learned, no, like we cannot move ahead and move along in life and actually grow and reach our highest and best potential until we actually leave the people who don't want the best for us. Like that took a long, hard time to figure out, you know, when your whole family is like depending, their entire unhealthy system is depending on you, you know, to stabilize all of their unhealthy behaviors, to make sure that absolutely none of their unhealthy behaviors ever impacted them. You had to be there to stabilize that out. You know, that's hard to leave. Like, that's hard to leave because you're just like, they're going to reap the rewards of all their unhealthy behavior. Like, that's hard because you've been raised your entire life not to do that. But we found, and we were like, we will never, ever, ever grow up. We will always be little kids and slaves. I mean, essentially slaves. And it felt like that. It felt like being freed from bondage and everything like that. And suddenly we grew up. We grew up fast and we got free, and we found out how, like I said in the Thanksgiving video, we found out who we were quickly, and how happy life could be and how free. And then that brings me to my second thing is, so anyway, but part of that was we had to learn not to be codependent with each other. And that was a big thing that I learned. Another therapist gave this to me. They drew a series of 6 circles on a piece of paper, and they said, okay, what is a healthy relationship? And they had 2 circles far apart, and then they had 2 circles right next to each other, and then they had 2 circles overlapping like a Venn diagram. And they said, well, you know which one's the healthy relationship? And I'm sorry, I have cat hair all over me. Like, Taz wanted a really big love fest, and I did that. And it's great, but I've got, like, invisible Taz cat. Like, I've got a mask of Taz cat on me right now, which is great. He doesn't always want those, and so I'm very, very happy. So, but I'm also very, very itchy. So anyway, and I was like, well, the Venn diagram, right? And it's so funny because I talked to my celebrity friends and they're like, oh, well, the one over here, like the one where you're totally separate. And I was like, what? Like, so it totally depends on like where you are and what the healthy and what the circles are supposed to be you as an individual and who you are as a whole person. And what the healthy is right next to each other. You're not supposed to like overlap. If the other person goes away on vacation or goes away for a work, job or whatever, can you still be a whole, happy, healthy individual and be just fine? And that's the thing is that, so we had to learn like, okay, like, yeah, we go in and like, okay, don't participate in like, don't facilitate them taking me down, but I also cannot like rely on my husband to rescue me, because that was my thing. It's like, oh, I have my knight in shining armor, now rescue me. That was not his job. That's codependency. And so we had to learn all that. Does that make sense? So there was that navigating. So, but learning to be, we're on your team. And because of that, and because of all that navigating, one of the things that our friends would point out to us is that we always talked in we, like you can hear me saying we. And they said most couples complain about each other behind each other's back. And I had forgotten about that because we don't do that. Like we don't. And I think that's because we learned like that phrase of like, I'm on your team, you're on my team. And if you approach life that way of like, this is my teammate, like we're going after life as a team, and like remind each other, like, I'm on your team. Because sometimes, it's really important to say things. And I've been listening to Jordan Peterson when I was doing my makeup for this. And he says that, like, say to people, like, say it, like, verbally say things. You know what I mean? And it's good to actually say it, especially in this society where there's not a lot of positive things said. Like, we don't take the time to say things positive because we're barraged with so much negative. Everything we read online, there's nothing actually positive being said. You can't even get a music Like music can go viral, everyone loves it, but you will not read anything positive. You just won't. You won't read anything glowing unless it's a makeup review. Like that's it. Unless it's to get you to buy something, that's the only time you read something positive. And that makes it hard for people actually because there's some kind of internal shame about something, saying something positive, but that's them that want you to do that. It doesn't mean it's actually bad to do. It's really important to do, which brings me to my yes, okay, so that brings me to my fourth one. So, always say, like, well, not, you don't have to do it, but this is what we do. I've noticed that we say please and thank you to each other. Like, even now, and I don't know where that came from. I don't know where it came from. I don't. I swear I don't know where it came from. But we say please and thank you about everything. We must say it to each other 30 times a day. Like okay, like let me give you an example. It's permeates our day. Okay. So I wake up in the morning and I am screaming in pain and my meds aren't sitting next to me and I say baby and I have to wake him up and I'm like, do you mind if you could please get me my meds? I'm so sorry. Like, could you please, because I feel really bad for waking him up. Could you please do that for me? And then I say, thank you so much, baby. Thank you. And he's like, no problem, baby. I love you. And I'm like, I love you too, baby. Thank you so much. Go back to sleep. I love you. Thank you. And then, like, just tonight, like, I was able to walk and he was just so tired from doing so much that he was just so tired he couldn't even, like, he'd made a salad for himself and he couldn't even get up to the kitchen to get the salad. And I was like, do you need to go to bed early? Like, you need to go to bed early? Like, go to bed early, baby. And I was like, I'll do this, or whatever. And I was like, he's like, well, I didn't get my salad yet. I made a salad. And I was like, do you want me to get that for you? And he's like, could you do that, please? Like, that would be amazing, baby. Thank you so much. And I was like, I would love to do that for you, baby. Like, here. And we always say, and he's like, thank you. Like, thank you. And maybe it sounds like baby talk to you guys. But we hold and caress each other like it's awful now because we don't get to do that very often because it hurts so much when he can't touch me. But when he can, you know what I mean? Like we hold and touch and caress and just we're grateful for each other. And that is a skill you have to learn. And I just listened to Jordan Peterson say, like, if there's something that they do, and I realize that I do this, this is actually a conscious thing. When he gets the meds for me or whatever, I am saying, like, please and thank you, because I do want him to feel good about doing that again. I do want to praise that behavior again. Like, I do want that behavior to continue. I do want to be able to get my meds. I don't want him to hate getting the meds. I don't want him to hate it. I want him getting the meds to be the most pleasant experience possible. Like, I'm thinking that in my head. Like, I'm like, always like, how, and Peterson was saying that, like, if someone does something that you like, say it. Like, say that you like it. Because someone won't do it again unless you say that you like it. Like, they'll learn real fast if they get negative reinforcement. Like, it's a thing in teaching that they used to teach. You know, like the Soros funding has wiped it out of education. But it used to be there, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. You get a gold star for good behavior. And that's just something you do. That's love. That's loving. Be loving. And maybe it's hard. Maybe you have a contentious relationship. But there will be good things that you do. Small things. Maybe they grab the keys for you. Or maybe they did something for your kid. Maybe they did something nice to the cat. And be like, I love the way that you did that. Like anything, you can find something that's good. And you just start small and you make a compliment. Because you've got to get to the place where you realize that you're on the same team. And it's you and them against the world. Not you and each other against each other. Like if there's war in the home, like the rest of the world will just be against you. Like you'll never make it. You'll never move forward in life. You've got to be able to have a teammate to go against the world with. And then you can contend with the world. You know, like then you can conquer the world. You have a chance. If you can get a teammate. And this is a great way to do it. And then the last thing was saying, I love you. Like we just say, I love you. And we were sick. I was thinking about trying to remember what it was that we said in the beginning. Like in the beginning, we compete. Like we had a whole phrase like, I love you more. What was it we'd say? It'd be like, I love you. And when we own the business, we were like, I love you more. I love you mostest. I love you more. And then I love you to infinity. And someone finished with, I love you to infinity. But God, I was just so grateful to find him. I just felt so freaking lucky. And I wanted to say it. And the thing is that when you do that, the emotion then never dies. Like we've started saying it again. Like as I've gotten healthier, I've noticed the sayings come back. And it's just like, I was like, it didn't die because we just didn't stop saying I love you. Like the emotion continues if you don't stop saying it. Like you preserve it. You preserve it. But also the other way that you preserve it is by keeping the bad out. You've got it. You protect the relationship by keeping the bad out. Like our love was able to be protected and grow by keeping the people who threatened it the most out. Like the families just were so poisonous. So poisonous. And Peterson said that he was just like, be aware, like you cannot be around people who are not for you. And I was just like, God, the most dangerous thing about that is that the people who are the least for us are usually our families. If you really pay attention, it's usually our families who would really rather have us do what they want. Like, they say they want the best for us, but then it usually comes with all these caveats. You know, yes, you can have the money, but actually we want the money to be spent this way. Or, like, I see it all the time on YouTube. Like, kids will not actually mention their parents unless they just got something from their parents with money. Like, you will never hear about the parents, and then finally they say something glowing about the parents, but it's because the parents just bought them something. And I'm like, no, that's not the way it works. Like, no. When there are strings attached, no. No. Like, that's not real love. And what you do with people that don't really love you is, and there's this great thing that I learned, this great lesson that I learned that taught me so much. And they said what you do is, in order to protect the love, you have to take that person, and it was in like something about safe people or something about, I don't remember where I learned it, some training or something like that. And it said, you know, all right, use rows. I know there's something out there about rows. There's some meme about rows of people. Who's in your front row? Well, there's tons of rows, right? You have a ton of rows of people. Well, what you do is if someone's like, they bring you down or whatever, if they're not always a positive force in your life, because there are people who are positive forces in your life always, they should always be a positive force. If there's like a positive force 9 times out of 10, that 1 out of 10 is what matters. That's when they really get you. Those are the most manipulative people. Worst people. I learned that the freaking hard way. And so there's actually all these studies about that. Oh my gosh. All these studies with rats and stuff about that. Boy, that was fascinating. So they said there's all these rows or whatever. And then they said what you do to protect your love for that person. Like if you have a harmful person close to you, like as you start to figure out that they're awful to you, even if they're a family member or whatever, like you start to really hate or resent or not like them so much. And they said, so put them further away from you, like separate them out in your life and get them further away enough in your life and put them row back and then another row back, another row back until you can love them. Until all you feel is love for them. Get them at a certain distance in your life. Like get them at like 1 call a day, then 1 call a week, then 1 call a month, and then 1 call a year. You know, get them to the place where then suddenly all you have is good memories. Like the more distance you put between someone who doesn't treat you positively at all times and doesn't want the best for you at all times, is not a force for good in your life at all times, you move them on out until what you feel for them is always love. And then when the love returns, because that's what happens with women who are abused. That's why you hear about it all the time. They put distance between themselves. They put that man, they leave, which means the man gets put a few rows back. And then all the good memories come rushing back. And they're like, oh, he was so great because the bad has been removed a few rows back. And they're like, oh, he wasn't so bad. The good memories return, the love returns. But then they go back. They forget that the reason that the love's returned is because he's been put a few rows back. Not because they're remembering it incorrectly or whatever. But that's my point. That proves it, that like when you put them rows back, it preserves love. But then what you learn is that's the row you're supposed to have them at. And that will preserve your love. And that way you have love in your heart for the person. And that way you have a loving relationship with the person that causes you harm. And that protects your love for them. That's good boundaries. So now I'm in a place where like I really, really can love my family and talk about them and everything like that and say it was abusive. But I can love them now. Like I can love them. But I'm like, yep, you're there. You know what I mean? Like, you're there. Like, we left and now we are happy and we have a fulfilled life. And they figured it out. Like, they're just fine. They're just fine. They're doing just fine. You always think their world's going to fall apart without you and everything like that. They make you feel like that. No. Not like that at all. Like, it's a facade. I think the worst part is that you find out how much they actually didn't care. Like, that's probably the worst part. But that just reinforces that, yeah, you were supposed to get out. Like, you made the right decision. But it doesn't really hurt because you've got them so far out that you're like, oh, I still love them. Like, it can't hurt. Because the good memories are protected. And then the good memories can flood back. And that's when you start to heal and start figuring out why you do certain things. And you can start making healthier decisions because you're far enough away. And then your relationship with your people grow. I feel like I've covered a lot more than just, healthy things that you can do with your spouse or your loved one. But those are the things that my husband and I did to have a successful relationship. And honestly, if we hadn't done them, I'd be a lot worse. Like, I think that's why I'm so grateful. Like, I did the video on gratitude, and because it's so good, I'm going to attach it again here. Like, I think gratitude does protect me from a ton of pain. And I was thinking, like, why am I so grateful? And I realized because I have made sure my life is so full of love. Like I've put so many people in the right rows so that I have enough spaces filled where all the people who are good can fill those rows. So that like my life is full of love. Like my life is full of people who love me. And not a lot of people have life like that. And the last thing I want to say about that is that for those of you who are getting healthier, as you pair people out, you will go through transitions where you will be like, where'd everybody go? That's natural. We all go through it. All of us, all of us, all of us, all of us go through transitions where like no one's around because you have to go through the thing of pairing out the people who are not healthy. That's just natural. And oh, you're going to be so tempted to hang on to that one friend who's unhealthy because you don't want to have like no one around. Oh, but we have learned the hard way that, oh, it prevents the good people from coming in because they can feel that other person. Oh, God, there's one that we just hung on to. And that was our last barrier. Like we moved through so many people, so many different layers. And then there was just one that I just didn't want to let, it just didn't want to. And I finally let them go. And then that's when all like the boss people showed up. Like just a flood. And I was like, why was I holding on so tight? Like my life could have been so full. So it's risky, it's scary, but like that's what it takes. Clearly Taz wants more pets. I'm coming, baby. I guess it's time to get more hair on my face. All right, guys. Peace out. I love you, and I really hope this helped. I really do. I'm no Jordan Peterson, but take what you want. It's just, this is my life experience, and frickin' it's worked out. Like, it is so worked out. So I hope you can glean something from it. I love you. Bye.